Hi, I'm Dollita and welcome to my first YouTube video. For this video, I'm doing a collab with some wonderful doll artists from Instagram. The link to all of their videos will be below. Our theme for this video was Christmas, and so I knew I wanted to do something festive. Something that reminded me of Christmas. And the one thing that I know that I think of whenever I think of Christmas is snow, because England never gets snow for Christmas. I also really love fairies, and so I thought that I would combine snowflake with fairies and create a snowflake fairy. Design wise, I wanted to go with a lolita looking dress, just because it's cute and I like that style. I also really wanted to include bells because that's something that I also associate with Christmas. I really wanted my doll to have blue skin, so I decided to go with an Abbey doll for this design. I really like the Abbey doll's body because it has a lot of glitter incorporated into the skin, which makes it shimmer, and I thought that this would be great for a doll that was based on a snowflake, which looks like it's shimmering as it falls from the sky. Overall, the quality of the doll was actually really good, apart from a few bits of nail varnish that someone had painted onto the face. Not really sure why it was there, but it was going to be removed anyway. First things first, removing the head. To do this, I simply soaked the head in some boiling water and waited a few seconds, then grabbed a towel and yanked the head off. Next, I had to remove all of the hair. I really like the hair that's on the original Abbey doll, but it didn't suit my design, so I had to get rid of it. For this, I cut the hair short until she had a pixie cut. And then I grabbed a screwdriver and shoved it inside of her head. I scrape along the top of her head and to get all of the plugs out, and then once I've done this, I need to remove them from the inside. Unfortunately, I was an idiot and I bought the wrong set of pliers, so I had to just make do with some scissors, which really doesn't work all that well because it just cuts the hair from the inside of the doll and it doesn't actually grip it and pull it out, so that was a struggle. But once I got the bits of hair out and the glue, it was really satisfying. After a few hours of pulling and yanking and washing it out with water, I finally had a clean doll head. Well, as far as the hair went anyway. Now I have to remove the makeup. To do this, I used nail varnish remover. I didn't want to remove any of the glitter on her face, and so I had to be really careful with it. But the nail varnish didn't have 100% acetone, and so it was quite hard to get all of the makeup off of the doll. I eventually do it though, and she ends up with a really clean face. So that was good. After a few sprays of some sealant, it's time to work on the face. To start, I go in with some light purple pastels to shade the face, before gently dabbing on some darker purples to create a gradient. I mainly work into the eyes because I want to give her a light makeup look without actually making it too dark. Once I've done this, I start blending it out into the blue of the face, and then I start shading around the outside of the face. I also add some red to her cheeks to give her a nice rosy feeling. With the pastels down, it was time to start working on the facial features. I usually use pencil, but for some reason, no matter how much I tried, the pencil was just scraping off the sealant. I ended up just making really light marks with the pencil just to lightly mark in where I wanted all of my lines to be. And then I had to pull out the paint. I really don't use paint all that much, and this is only my third face up, so I was a bit nervous to start working on this. I didn't manage to record a lot of the working on the face because I had her right up close to mine and it was just out of frame constantly. I eventually manage and I do a pretty good face up, I think so anyway, and I'm actually really happy with how it turned out, so yeah. Now it was time to work on the body, but first I had to swap out her hands. I really didn't like the hands that the Abbey doll came with, and I wanted her to have dainty hands, so I swapped the hands out with another doll that I was working on. I think that both hands suit the other doll better, so it worked out well in the end. I really wanted the hands and legs to have a gradient, and so rather than painting the hands the blue colour that the skin was, I went straight in with the white. After adding a few coats of white to the hands and making sure that it was one solid colour, I sprayed them. And then I started working on the legs and the arms. To start with, I added a patch of white to the bottom, and then with a dry brush I started brushing the white up at the arms and the legs. This created a frosty look to it, which I thought looked really cool. So I did this a few times until the colour built up. The reason I did this was to make the tips of her arms and her legs look like they faded into ice and that she was made out of ice herself. And I think it worked out well. And now for the part that I was dreading the most, the clothes. The last time I made clothes, they really didn't turn out that well, so I didn't have high hopes, but I went into it and I must say I'm actually pretty happy with how they turned out. To start, I had to make some patterns for the clothes themselves. So I wrapped my doll in cling film and whipped out the masking tape. This was so that I could get a vague idea of what the body would look like with the clothes on, but also I could just cut the masking tape off of the body and then just use that as a make-do pattern before transferring it onto actual paper. Once I had the patterns down, it was time to work on some prototype clothes. I really didn't use great materials for the prototypes, but I must say I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. For the final version of the clothes, I had to pick out some fabrics. I went with some blue fabrics, just so that they complemented the skin, but also because it kept in with the frosty theme. After cutting out the patterns, it was time to get sewing. I'm really not that great at sewing, so I can't really tell you what I did, but I basically hemmed up the sides of the cloth and then sewed each of the bits together. Now, I didn't have any Velcro or snaps, so I just had to pull them on over the top of the doll's head, which was really quite problematic, and I wasn't sure if it would work, but I got there in the end. I wanted to make my own shoes out of clay, and so I got to work on that. For this, I used another doll so that I could get the shape of the foot correct, and I just grabbed a lump of clay and stuck it onto the foot before melding it and shaping it. I'm actually really happy with how the clay part turned out, but no matter how much I tried, the ribbon that I wanted to attach the clay just wouldn't stick. I even tried to glue it onto my doll's body, but it just wouldn't work. So I had to just settle with some doll shoes that I had. I'm not really that sad about it though, because I think they turned out really well. I started by painting a blue coat of paint onto the shoes, which I built up until it was even. I couldn't think of the word. After I'd done this, I used some silver paint to detail the sole and heel of the shoe, and then a darker blue to detail where the heel met the actual shoe itself. I'm not really sure what that's called, but yeah. And then with some white paint, I did a similar technique to how I did the leg, but this time from the top to the bottom. Once I'd created a gradient on the shoe, I went in with some silver paint just to add a little bit more shimmer to it. And I must say, they look pretty good. For the hair, I followed a tutorial by Mozekyto. So I really can't say much about what I did, but if you want to know how I made the hair, I'll leave a link in the description. The last time I made a wig, it didn't turn out very well, so this was another thing that I went into without very high expectations. I'm not sure what I did wrong last time, but the wig cap just wouldn't hold its shape, and so I just didn't expect much. The first thing I worked on was the wig cap. I have to wait a few hours between each coat for it to dry, but eventually it turned out well. Next, I just followed the tutorial and glued on wefts. I actually ended up having to glue the wig cap onto the doll's head because it was just too heavy to stay in place alone. so that was a thing. Once I'd done this, I threaded some ribbon through these bells that I had and tied them onto the hair with bows. If you look at my concept art, you can see that she originally had some wings. I couldn't really figure out how to make or attach them, so I ended up having to scrap them. I'm kind of sad about this. I think that if she'd had the wings, she would have looked a lot more spirit-like and just cuter overall. But I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. All of the other elements are there, and that's all that matters. And there you have it. Let me introduce you all to Vidre. She's a winter spirit who looks over snowflakes and controls snowfall. She never visits England though. I'm really happy with how she turned out, especially considering the last doll that I made, which you can see on Instagram. I think I've made a massive improvement since the last doll, and I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to join in with this collab. Make sure you go and watch everyone else's videos, links will be in the description. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. See you next time, bye!